All right, here we go. This is it. This is the webinar that I have been waiting for. My name's Steve Stewart. I created the Podcast Editors Facebook group. I am a full-time podcast editor, self-employed, I guess you'd say, and this is something I've really been looking forward to. We're learning about iZotope's RX6. It's an amazing, some people say magical software that just fixes audio, period. And today we have a very special guest who knows a lot about RX6. His name is Don Baarns. He's an audio restoration, I'm going to say specialist.
Yes,
Does
sir.
some coaching, recovery. He's been with RX since, or using RX since version 3, so it's been a while. And they call him the father of the mouth declicker. I want to hear more about that, Don.
Okay.
And then he also has a very active Facebook group for RX6, and another one is the, I think it's Audio Rescue. There's a group called Audio Rescue.
Yeah, that's the RX group.
That's the RX group. Okay, great.
Yes.
Well, I just told a little bit about who you are. Why don't you take 2 minutes real quick and just explain, fill in the blanks. What's your background and how did you get into the RX6 field?
Yeah, so I started recording when I was about 18. So I've been doing this a long time. I was a full-time musician as I was a young guy, and I wanted to know what was happening on the other side of the glass. I took a recording course in Detroit from some ex-Motown engineers. Motown was moving here to LA, and I took a class, and I did well enough in the class because I was kind of a nut, and I would do anything, like I was so excited about recording. And they hired me afterward. And one of the engineers there had been doing mastering for Motown, and he didn't want to move to LA. So he taught me to run a Neumann lathe. And he started me on this bizarre path of listening to things and understanding. And he would say, like, ooh, that's going to skip there. And I'd say, well, how do you know that? Well, today I understand that you can hear the needles ride up on the different grooves on each side. You can hear how the phases shift. There's a lot of things you can do. So I've been recording for a long time. My wife and I got involved with audiobooks, and I was about to shoot myself because cleaning up audiobooks is not a fun thing. I had accused her of eating popcorn while narrating and pop rocks, and she did not like that, by the way. I don't recommend. Do not say that to your spouse, but I did at some points. So I was studying how to get out clicks, and I started off taking Audacity. I knew a lot of DAWs for a couple reasons because I've been doing some of this stuff. But my adult son had done a project in Audacity about 5 years ago, and I made a decision, I can probably learn his software sooner than I can have him learn mine. And he was involved with it. It was his project. And yeah, Dad, can you help me? So I was just zooming in to the point where I was drawing out. And if you've done this, it is a wonderful, fun project. Oh, no, it really is.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would hand draw out clicks and pops and learned how to sculpt it. And I understood that, I could zoom in enough, but that just takes forever. And on a book that's 5 hours or 10 hours, it just became impossible. And I really said, either I'm going to quit because it's too much time, or we're going to find a solution. And I started exploring, and I found RX3 by actually, there's some things I found in the interim, found RX3 and realized that it would handle about 80% of her cases. So it cut my editing time down so much and wasn't perfect. And then later in 2015 or so, I went to iZotope. I am somewhat known as the father of the mouth declicker because I had gone to them and said, look, I knew I had developed relationships with the developers, the guy who writes the denoiser and the declicker. And I said to him, I cannot believe what you handle denoising and declicking. At the same time, don't take this wrong, I can't believe what you miss in terms of mouth noise. And what he told me was, well, the declickers never really were, that's a happy side effect. They weren't designed to handle mouth noise. They were designed for vinyl restoration originally, and it was a happy side effect that we could handle voices through RX. And so on some voices, the old declickers were spectacular. But I had to run for my wife 3 to 4 passes. I learned how to run multiple passes at light levels in order to have it work on her voice. And I just showed him my problems. Like, you cannot, he just said, wow, yeah, that is pretty bad. And I'll even play you a little example. I've got a mouth noise example. I'll show it in action. And he took that, and literally 2 years later, I'd been feeding him samples from a bunch of different voices. After that, they came out with the mouth declicker. And it's really the first tool dedicated specifically to mouth noise. They should have called it mouth denoiser, but they already had a voice denoiser and spectral denoiser and made a decision. So anyway, that's probably way more than you wanted to know. So I'd rather show you than just talk about it. Any other questions, Steve? Anything I missed that I should have gone over there? I don't hear you.
Hold on, I had to unmute
there you
myself. I'm also trying to keep up with things on the chat room and people singing, "Hey, I got the link. Where's the link?" All that stuff. So I apologize, but
Okay, no
I think
problem.
that's a good background because really, I mean, you have been involved with iZotope, so I think that gives you the level of credibility here to be the person to show us how to use RX6. So why don't you go ahead and start screen sharing? Don't forget to click that little box to share your computer audio,
Got
and then I
this,
will let
share
you take
computer
it from there.
sound. And then I'm going to share screen here. And then if there's anything, so it should be sharing about now. It takes a second.
Yep.
You seeing that there?
And I just heard myself.
Okay.
Twice. 3 times.
So obviously, so this is RX6, and I'm in an advanced edition here. One of the things that I do that you can do, and I highly recommend you do if you come in, just a little bit of the environment. Now, listen, there's a bunch of you here that have been using this for a while, and it's going to bore you to death the first couple minutes here. What I hope to do is also address some things that help you as well, but I need to make sure we're all on the same page. So over on the right, you have what they call modules. And in any other program, those might be called effects. But anyways, if you're in RX, they're going to be called modules. Get used to it. And then the first thing you want to do when you come in is customize it a little bit, because like if you have advanced, there's just way too much. So I have a subset here. You can go through and they do something called a list filter. And just by simply choosing this, I can go through and I'm going to say demo. And when doing that, now I can uncheck things that I know I'll never use. And so in the beginning, if you don't know what azimuth is, turn it off. Okay, you might not know what dither is. Turn it off temporarily, because when you're done, so I go through, I'm going to customize this whole thing and pretend that I'm making some sense. I'm not doing anything but taking off a bunch of them. But then when you're done, you get a subset list, which is just the tools you're going to use. In the beginning, you won't know which tools you use, but as soon as you can, customize it and then go through and keep updating it over time. You can edit your list anytime you want and add something back in. And then they always have this at the very top, all. So if you're wondering, is there a tool available for me to do something that I need, and maybe you hit it at one point because you don't know what a debleed is, or maybe ambience match doesn't mean anything to you, that's cool. Simplify it down to the tools you use regularly, and then work your way back up over time. And remember, you can always go back to all. So you're just hiding things, making your life easier. And they also come with a set of presets here. So there's your dialogue and voice presets, okay? And if you're just not sure, don't let it overwhelm you is my biggest point. Do something simple, build on that, and customize these things and make it your own environment. So that's one of the first things that I do to make life simpler. Now today, I'll probably start with my primary, and then if we want to do something else, we'll go into some other modules. And my primary, 98% of these things here, at least up at the top, they are all part of standard. And there's two editions. There's 3 editions. Elements is the entry-level one, and it has just a few tools. I don't know if I created a group for that. I may have done that. Standard, no, I didn't. Here's the things in standard. For example, I did create a group with standard. I should have created one. It's a subset. It has the declicker. It has the voice denoise. I'm drawing a blank on the other ones that it has, but it just has a few tools. Does not have the mouth declicker, unfortunately. So it's a subset, entry level, but you want to get into standard if you're editing for yourself. If you're editing for others, then save up and get advanced when you can. Wait for a sale and buy advanced. And the reason I say that is, if I'm editing for others, which I do all the time, you come up with situations that you have to solve. In my own studio, if there's reverb, I'm an idiot, okay? Because I have full control in my studio and there should be no reverb or in this place. And if there is, I need to treat that. So that's the first defense. But in this case, so I'm going to assume if you're doing something for others, well, they send me stuff that has amazingly horrible stuff. And let me give you a couple simple examples here. Now, if there's any questions, Steve, I'll assume you're going to break in. But until then, I'm going to kind of be a little house on fire, if that's okay. Okay?
Yep,
So the first thing we have is we have this interface here, and this is the interactive interface. In my mind, I think of RX as 3 tools. Number 1 tool is just interactively where I have sound. This is called a spectrogram. If you haven't worked with a spectrogram, they're pretty amazing. Most people are used to seeing things if they haven't worked with RX in this type of view, which is your waveform view. Now it looks like what I might see in virtually every other DAW, a variation on that. In this view, this is where I live. This is called a spectrogram. And the beauty of a spectrogram is you have the lowest frequencies at the bottom and the highest frequencies at the top. So if you haven't worked with it, then I'm going to use, I love this, I'm going to select the square tool so that I may select rectangles within my audio. All right, so the square tool allows you to select rectangles, also known as time and frequency. The interesting thing about this is, listen to this. If you haven't had a tool like this before, you've never been able to visualize your audio, and this will teach you dramatic amounts about your audio and what you can fix and what you can take care of over time. And also, you'll notice there are 2 play buttons here. The first play button is your standard play.
Then click the back arrow at the...
And so that just plays everything. I'm going to go over, I'm going to take this section here. And that's the normal.
Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else.
I've also turned on the looping thing. I live with the looping turned on just because I want to be able to select something and automatically have it loop. But then there's this other button here that I consider magic. It's the play frequency selection button, and it's another play button. And whichever one you do, the next time you press the space bar, that's the one that will play again. But this is a beautiful thing because listen to this. Now, it's a good idea if you have headphones or you have your monitors where you can hear things a little louder. So what you'll notice is as I move this little rectangle up, I get different parts of the spectrum. And over time, you start learning that every voice has their noise. Like I can tell, since I've done thousands of hours with my wife, and she's 500 times the voiceover artist that I am now and probably ever will be. So I'm going to diss her here and there here, but let's be straight. She's 10 times my level in terms of actual execution and acting skills and a lot of other things. So I'm going to pick on her few weaknesses, okay? I have some examples that are her and some examples that are others, but the point is that now I can do this other thing. I'm going to play frequency, and I'm not going to talk over it. But as I move this up here, I'm going to keep on adding more and more frequencies. And when we get to about here, you can go ahead and start figuring out. I'm going to move this over right here. Now, this is an interface quirk. I almost consider it a bug. The only way you can scroll RX is you can grab this little thing and you can scroll up here. I don't usually use that. You can also grab the timeline and you can drag over on it. That is totally unintuitive and comes from their history. And I've asked them for, 3 versions, version 4, 5, and 6, for a scroll bar. And they ignored me. Now they got my thing that really have saved my life, which is the mouth declicker. So I have given them some forgiveness for that. But I'm ticked off. Anyways, I'm hoping RX7, which I know someday is going to come out, then I will get scroll bars. But for right now, we don't have it. But you can see right here is my frequency scale, or your frequency scale. And as I play this, you're going to notice that when we get to about here, you can fully understand everything in this voice because the range that is actually approximately 300 to roughly 3,500 here, that's the intelligibility range. And let me show you that. So watch this. Now, why do I go through this? If I cannot find a sound, a noise, something that I want to adjust, and I cannot highlight it, I cannot fix it if I'm using the interactive tools. If I'm using some of the modules, they'll just do it for me, and I'm going to have it take out mouth noise. But the real finesse from this tool is that I can select a little, this is a click right here, and if I choose to, I can diminish that. I've got some keyboard shortcuts, and that just diminished it a little bit. I'm going to undo that. And there are a bunch of tools that'll do that for me automatically, but you're going to get into things that you can save audio, you can save a podcast that really would have been garbage because you can go in and take something out. But let's check this out here. I'm going to select this little area. I'm going to press play this selection. At this point, you can't tell what she's saying. I'm not even high enough to get her fundamental all in there.
Or you want to watch something else, or you want to watch something else, or you want to watch something else, or you want to watch something else.
So at that point, I'm at 4K. And what you'll notice is that within that range there,
or you want to watch something else,
that's almost her whole voice range. Everything else above that is kind of, it does help. It makes a difference. If she had a sister who was doing the same thing, this range up here is where her sister will sound somewhat different than she will. It's in your harmonics, the upper level, the things that are above your fundamental that make you sound like you and me sound like me, but it's all in here. But listen to this up here. There's very little. It's very difficult to tell what she's saying there. And then of course,
something else, or you want to watch something.
So what does that mean? Why is that valuable? Because a lot of ticks and pops and mouth noise and what I call, this is a technical term, crapola, is sitting right up here, okay? And if you can learn to deal with this range that's up here at the top, this is what people hear a lot. And plosives are going to come down here, and you know, we can take out a bunch of stuff down below her voice too, because now listen to this, same range. I go down here, everything below, I'm going to say, by the way, there's a little meter here that tells me exactly where I started and where, so the range that I'm at, what the selection is. This is the selection right here. This is the length. And then this is, it started at 0 hertz and I went to 117.6 hertz. And you can watch this meter right here. As I select a range, you see that it is telling me exactly the range that I'm at. So if you're ever wanting to learn and understand where are the clicks in my voice, I'll tell you right here, this is about where most people's clicks are. And assuming you're on the standard scale, they're going to be sitting right about there. But watch this here. If I go down right here, you can't hear any of that. Even if I go over where there is some other.
It's over, or you want.
I go over here. There I went higher. Look at my number. I'm at 144. You can barely hear anything. But if I go down here below 100-ish, 113, there's nothing there. Well, why do you care about that? Well, here's the first thing that I do with almost everything I'm working with. I'm going to go through here and I'll ignore the man behind the curtain. I'm just going to go here, take a preset. But I have this turned on to where I have a high pass and low pass here. Depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing an audio book, I may be a little more severe because they're going to take out some things. If you're in a podcast, you make a decision. How much of the high pass stuff do you want to do? I still take it out. And someday we'll get into this discussion. Oh, I want my voice to sound natural. I go, hey, cyanide's natural. But that's not what I want. I want my voice to sound good, and I want my voice to sound intelligible and engaging. I really don't care if it sounds, quote, like me. If you can understand me and you hear what I'm doing and it sounds good to you, you don't know what I sound like. I mean, you just think I sound good. So here's the first thing that I do with almost everything that I'm working with. Let me take a small subset here, and I'm going to go through, and you all do this too. I go through and I process this, and I just take out everything below her voice and everything at the very high end, where if you're an adult my age, I'm 57, soon to be older than that. Everything above 15K, just to be honest with you, if I'm doing music and you take this out, I'd hate you. But if you're doing voice, you could take out things as low as 12K. And most people, if you're an adult, can't hear that much. If I'm a kid, if I'm below 15, I can actually hear a bunch of stuff up here, but you know, I'm not going to hear it. Most people aren't going to hear it. And by the time it goes over the wires, to be honest with you, you can get rid of a bunch of junk up there. So I recommend you do that. So the first thing I do is a high pass, low pass. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about mouth noise. Okay. This is kind of what got me on this whole journey of restoring audio, was mouth noise. So I have a little section here. Let me play this for you, and then I'll show you a couple tricks that you can use, that you can take this and in your own audio, you can use this trick. And let me play it for you first.
Or you want to watch something else, or you want to watch something else, or you want to watch something else.
Okay, sorry. And some of you would like to watch something else, but I'm making you watch this. How do you like that? I didn't realize she was going to say that and diss me like that. But when I hear that, immediately I hear this click right here. I hear this click right here. I hear this one here. I hear this one here. And there's a couple little baby clicks in between there. I can actually see them. You see that one there? There's a click. But let me play that again. So now I just identified them for you. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 immediately. Okay, let me look at, and I'm going to set this up. Remember, I have my looping turned on so that, and I press my space bar.
Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else.
And then right in here, there's a little baby one. Now here's a little trick. Using the up arrow key does two things in, oh, remember I kind of said there's another little click here? Because there's a click, and as I zoom in, you can see it. I'm going to highlight it for you in case you, like, I hear them before I see them. There's a click there. There's a little, this is a low end one. Almost no one, few people will hear this. If you got good ears and you've got the right kind of system, you might hear that one. But you see these little vertical lines here? These are usually clicks when you see them in RX. And some of it's mouth noise, so there's saliva, there's all sorts of stuff that if you have trained ears, you hear. It's hard to watch the news sometimes, so I just avoid it. Not only is it bad news most of the time, but it's unlistenable news as your ears become trained. And I can hear all these things going through, and it irritates me.
Want to watch something else.
Now, here's the thing. Do we have to take out 100% of them? You know the answer. No. If I sit here and I say I call it the syndrome. I probably said 2 or 3 times in this already. I have no idea. Steve probably can go, yeah, you said it 30 times, but whatever. He's counting them because you guys are all counting them because you have to take them out all the time. And therefore, if I don't say it too much, nobody cares. It's a matter of when you get to that point where I say enough times that it sticks in your head that, Don says cool too often. Then you get irritated the next time I say cool or whatever my nonsense word is. And it's the same with these mouth clicks, that at first I could go through and I can turn on something called instant process, and I could go through here and I can actually, I'm going to zoom in. It zooms in on this. I could paint them out. Now, this is what I call the hard way. I don't recommend that, but you notice I don't need to totally eliminate it. I just need to reduce it. And right there, I just dragged 3 times. And I got rid of, and just listen to the difference right now. Now, I'm not recommending you do this, by the way. You need to, I had my instant process turned on. You need to know how to do this because there are other sounds that will take care of where this skill is very handy. I'm just doing it here on some mouth clicks because they're easy to see and the technique works in a lot of places.
Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else.
I still hear the one here. I still will hear the one here. I'm not saying it's pristine or perfect, okay? But nonetheless, I did really drag 3 times, 4 times in order to get that. Undo, 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 undo. Undo is our biggest friend, by the way. So I can go through and paint some of these out with Spectral Repair. I'm using Spectral Repair and I'm painting some out and boom, they're gone. Now, I'm not going to do it that way. So undo, 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 undo. And we get back here. Here's the way I'm going to really do it. I'm going to go through and instead use the mouth declicker. I keep doing that. I have a keyboard. If I'm not talking to you, I have a keyboard shortcut to toggle this on and off. I recommend you do that, but bonus. This is a green stamp bonus. If you're old enough, for the rest of you, it's just a bonus. Where when you hover over any of these controls, they will tell you the name of it. Because sometimes it's like, what the heck is it called? I was almost going to swear there. And then I can go look it up in the documentation. And this is instant process. And it also shows my keyboard shortcuts that I have the I key, which is the default. And I've added the X key because my hand sits on the home row. X is totally non-intuitive. It only means something to me because that worked for me. But I can toggle that on and off. But watch this. I'm going to now go in and use the mouth declick tool. And I'm going to pull this up. And I have some setting. This is not accurate. If I actually go to, then here's a key. I have presets for everything and everybody. Anybody that I work with more than once, I have presets for. And I recommend that once you find a setting that works for somebody, I told you, I might have told you, my adult son is a killer voiceover guy. And during spring training, Major League Baseball, he's the voice. He does play-by-play for the Arizona. No, who did he do this year? The Oakland Athletics, excuse me. So during spring training, he's out at a different facility with different mics, and he sends me samples, and I give him presets for all the things because he's on a bunch of different equipment. So that's an example of anytime his stuff came in and I was helping him out while he was at spring training. He's done this like 5 years, play-by-play for Oakland. I set him up a preset, and then he doesn't have to think about it, and he can run this against all his audio with no problems. And you really want to use the little preset right here. This is called, I call this a cheeseburger menu. For those of you that are in software business, you know this is a hamburger menu. It has 3 things. I jokingly call these a cheeseburger menu because they have 4. I don't think that's the official title, but that's what I'm calling it. You can add your preset, update it when you want to, and get rid of them. You also can take these and move them between machines. So if you run an RX on more than one, most of us have a laptop and a desktop, then you can bring the presets between the different machines and have them all set up. But once you get one, you can use it here. And then I'm going to, in this case, just go ahead and put it. It doesn't really matter if I set it to the default. I will change this. And here's what I do. The first time I go through and turn on output clicks only. So if you haven't worked with this, this is on most of the tools. And output clicks only allows
Movie is over. Then click the back arrow. Movie is over.
And now here's the thing. This kind of wigs people out initially at first. When RX is doing this, it has a pre-roll in that it sounds normal for 1 second. I think it's 1 second. There's a setting there's a setting over here that you can tell it how far you want it to pre-roll. Yeah, mine's set to 1 second before and 1 second after. So anytime we're pre-rolling, people go, why does it start playing my audio? It plays your audio for as long as you tell it to over here. By default, it's a second. When it gets to the end of my region, it plays an extra half second, then it loops back. Okay, that's what it's really doing right there. It's using these settings here. You hate that, turn it off. Okay, I like it. I understand why it does what it does, but that's why you hear something here and then it goes, and then it's doing what I say here. And in this particular case, what I'm doing with the preview.
Quieter. Then click the back arrow. Quieter.
So what we want to do is we want to get this thing to where, and then I'll do this very often. I process it so I get a visual representation of it. Undo is your biggest friend here. Obviously Control Z or Command Z, depending on the platform you're on. And I want to see how much, and people do kind of get confused by this. This is not how much it's taking out. It is not leaving holes in your audio. It is what it is going to process. And when it sees this, it does. Now, if you listen to these, some of them are subtle, some of them are not so subtle. But when it gets to this, it's going to take, and you see this guy here, when it's done, it's going to build a little bridge. And instead of leaving a hole in our audio, it's going to go ahead. If I take this out and I ask it to process it, I don't know if you can, did you see that? I'm going to undo that. Watch. Remember, I was here. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of watch those 4 here. And watch what happens when I choose process. Gone. Now, well, listen.
Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else.
So here's the process. I want to just go over this super quick here. I don't know what yours needs to be. So I'm not going to tell you, you're going to guess. If you are clickier, try something more. And, it's okay. Start low. Try it. Go really high. Go higher than you think it should be able to handle. People are buying drugs. I mean, don't think like that way. People are buying Advil. They want extra strength, right? You got a headache and you don't want wimpy strength. You want maximum strength. So therefore, try it on more than what you think is reasonable. Process it. And listen.
Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else.
It's actually pretty amazing. By the way, this is one of the few tools that I can push really hard and it still sounds darn good. Now, and then once I find, oh, that sounds pretty good, I'll do this. I'll go through, wait a second. Undo. All right. I'm going to take this and try, if that sounded great, I'm going to back it off by at least 1 and I'm going to try it again. And I'm going to keep backing it down until...
Or you want to watch something else.
That's fine by me. And I would evaluate it. Okay, I have my monitors turned down so that we don't feedback here. I can hear it's doing its job. I'd be comfortable with that. And I'm going to keep going down the scale until I get something that if this worked great, I'm going to keep going down and seeing how low can I do it and have it still be acceptable. And I'm not trying to take everything out to where they are 100% gone. I'm trying to get it to a point. Now, see, that one missed that one right there. I can even see it. See that there? 3.5 missed that. But I'm going to undo that and put those back. So I know I'm going to end up somewhere around there. And there it is.
Or you want to watch something else. Or
okay. So that's the process. First, start with output clicks only and use the preview button. You can go back and forth between the preview and the bypass. And if I really want to do a final test where I really, really want to know, I'll undo this. I'll take this little section here. I'll copy it. There's a great feature that not enough people use called this new from clipboard. Well, clipboard just means I just made a copy. If you're in the computer business, you know that means clipboard. Now, I just copied that couple seconds over to a new file. See here called untitled. So if I'm going through and I'm working with something, I may take that and copy it and I put it over here, and then I will go in and put the whole thing in twice. And then I will operate on this one. And then now I have this pretty bizarre thing. As long as I'm looping here, I can go ahead.
Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else. Or you want to watch something else.
And I can annoy myself by having the same thing loop too many times. But I also can compare A/B, the original, which came here when I did the create new from clipboard, and then I get the other one, which is my fixed one, and I can keep experimenting with it and make sure that I'm not changing the character of the voice too much. Sometimes it's actually better to change the character of the voice and have a clean sounding than it is to keep their voice sounding, because nobody knows what they sound like anyway. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit in terms of the process. We go through, and to begin with, there are some other finesse things that I'm doing regularly. For example, on female voices, I'm almost always skewed up a little bit, a couple points here toward about 2 to 3. It varies per voice, but I do have a tendency to do this. I also combine the classic declicker a lot of times, and I let it handle my very low end, and then I let this handle the high end, because the mouth declicker by default, change this here, will only handle clicks that are in about this region here. The mouth declicker is not designed to get low end clicks. Okay, it's not designed to get bumps. It's designed for mouth noise. There is no mouth noise that I know of that actually really occurs down there. So it can, okay, it can, but that they didn't do that. Matter of fact, they see now the way I'm doing it, where I'm doing this two-phase thing, where I'm having the regular declicker handling a very small subsection down here, doing some other things, and the mouth declicker handling some things here, and maybe we'll get something in the future that combines the two, just because that works. Okay.
Can you real quick just explain in the what the click widening does?
Okay, so when it's repairing, it's always looking at, so here's a click. So yes, I can. I guess I should answer that question. Yes, I'd be happy to, Steve. Thank you for asking. When it has to make the, first off, in a declicker's world, a click, I'm going to zoom in, is tiny, 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 tiny overall in terms of the default area of it. It's a very small section. So when the click widening comes in, this has to do with when it's doing the repairs. And on male voices, there are some guys where I prefer it to be a little wider, the area that it repairs, quote unquote, that it modifies is a better word for it, that it's going to modify a bigger area around the click. And just because guys' clicks can be longer, but it's not universal. So that one's a tricky one to generalize. And what we have to do is the same thing where we output, and this is a weird thing, when you output clicks only, this is hard. This is part of the repair process. So this doesn't show up. You have to do what we did here earlier, and that's A/B test them, where you're doing, and you know what, let me tell you the generalization. For general purposes, forget about it, okay? And here's why. No, because time is money, and if you have something that's just going out, it needs to be pristine, then that's a different standard, and and we can do that. And then that's worth exploring, because there are, so if you have a podcast and this is your premier podcast, or it's going out to somebody or an investor or a sponsor, and you want them to have the cleanest thing, then you may want to go through and do some of this finesse stuff.
Mhm.
For most people or most situations, that is not going to make enough of a difference that without having great monitors and great situations or the right voice. Occasionally I'll get into a voice where I just got to do it. But for most, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay.
Okay. All
So
right.
I'm happy to go over the details, but
No.
it just won't apply for most things that we're going to do where we're going out for a podcast, where if we've got two people on Skype, it's already kind of a little bit got some phasing issues and other stuff that are way bigger than the difference we can make here. Okay.
Okay.
So multi-clicker is a big deal, but let's say now you go ahead and you figure out what you want to do against this podcast, and a couple things that I'm going to do with almost all. I'm going to show you my big four. I'm almost always going to go ahead and I'm going to run a high pass, low pass. I just do that to almost everything. The only exception to that, where you have to be careful, and by the way, order matters, is if I'm going to do a deplosive warning. Deplosive must go before you do any EQ, because the deplosive, the way it works internally, it uses some of that energy. Remember I cut off all the stuff at the bottom and said, well, you don't hear anything down there. Well, it does. So call me a liar. Don't call me, well, not to my face. Wait, just do it behind the scenes. The reality is the computer hears it and does use some of that information, because when there's a plosive, there is information there. Whether I hear it or not is a whole different thing, depends on the volume. But it uses some, so therefore do not use this technique here before the deplosive. That's the only one. Then I like to do this because it cuts out some noise, top and bottom environmental, that if someone has a refrigerator or compressor that's running in the background, we'll run that. So I'm going to stack these up here. I'm going to run deplosive first. I'm going to run EQ second. I may run a declick pass here, but this is kind of strategic for most people. Skip that and go straight on to mouth declick. I use this almost everybody, okay? And it cracks me up because some people think they don't have mouth noise, and then later they hear it and they put it on this clicks only. And once they've heard it cleaned up, they can't go back. It's really pretty amazing on that. And then after that, then I'm going to run the denoiser, and my go-to denoiser, by the way, is the Spectral denoise. It takes a little longer, but it is a very, very, very high-end denoiser. We could spend an hour just talking about the denoiser and some special things it can do with its learn function, kind of, beyond the scope of what we're looking at today. It's pretty intense, but it's when used properly, no one knows we ran a denoiser. And that's the most important thing to me. I don't want people to know. If I do my job, nobody thinks I did anything. They just think they sound great. And you guys, we all have that same problem. We do all this work. We spend 4 hours fixing somebody's something, and then they go, well, so what? It sounds just normal. It's like, yeah, okay. All right. So those are the big four there, right there. And this one are the big three. This one I don't use on everybody. Breath control I will use on some, and the de-esser I do use on some. De-reverb, if you get into a situation. This one I ignored all of. It was in RX4, and I ignored de-reverb, and I just thought it's a piece of work, meaning bad. I wasn't very happy with it. Late version 5, my adult son started doing that, the play-by-play games out in Arizona, and he was in a hotel room that was terrible, and he had to record some VO, and I just said, all right, I'm going to figure this thing out. Today I go, this is really a killer thing, but learning to train it is a trick. And I don't have time to go over it all today, but if someone wants to know about that, yeah, contact me. I'll show you how to train that. This is a really high-end power tool when trained properly. I
think that is one of the things that this group would like to see.
Okay.
I think specifically, okay, so if I could, I don't want to, derail your presentation, but I don't want to keep everybody here all night either. Definitely the breath control interests me. D-bleed, I know we talked about beforehand, and we can't go through that tonight. The de-esser, I think people are interested in.
Okay.
But de-reverb. Oh, and voice denoise, actually, I think if it doesn't take too much.
Well, the voice denoise is easy and should be run on so here's the thing. There's 2 denoisers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of people are using Audacity's denoiser or Audacity's declicker. And I just will say, you know, I had used they're a few generations back. So if you're using those tools and you have RX, switch over to RX just because the quality of the repair is just so much higher. It's crazy. And if you want to do A/B comparisons, I'm happy to do that someday. But when it comes to the denoisers, this one is going to blow away what the Audacity denoiser does in terms of leaving the audio like breaths. If I overuse the denoiser in Audacity, I get into this problem where the breaths sound funny. Have you run into that?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so voice denoiser primarily is used by most people in what's called adaptive mode. So it's listening to my audio here. Let me see, I can take this one here, and it's taken out. Now the problem is this was recorded in a reasonable room, but you always have, for most things, you have a preview. And what I'm going to tell you is this thing's safe to go up to, yeah, you can go as high as, you can go pretty high with this one and not worry about it. But most important thing is you take a section, you highlight it. I now have my looping on. I turn on preview.
Quieter. If the movie is over or you want to watch something else, then
and while it's playing, every loop, I'm going to experiment with this and find a range that I like. And what I can say is this tool is strong enough that you're okay running it at 15 or below. It's pretty darn good. There is a new mode in the latest version. I usually work with surgical, by the way. I prefer that is the one that was in RX6 to begin with. Gentle came in just recently at the 6.1 update. It's optimized for dialogue. They did add this for some musicians figured out that they could use it too. But for our case, you're going to leave it on the defaults, which is dialogue and surgical. And what I recommend is the first time you come in, just start with 12. Oh, bonus. If you double click on all the controls, they will go back to their default. So if I can't remember, I couldn't remember that this was 12. So if I take it all the way down, double click on it, and then I'm going to let it loop and listen. Oh, I just processed it. Yeah. See, by the way, I'm a pro, so don't do it that way. No. I pay attention to what
quieter. If the movie is over or you want,
and then while it's playing, adjust it, then do a process and listen to it and verify and A/B things. And as long as you'll take, you're gonna. Let's back up. RX is like a chainsaw. It can help you make a ton of work, cut down millions of trees very quickly. Chainsaw is not going to be in my hands anytime soon because I'm probably going to cut my fingers off. It has the ability to cut down lots of trees and do great work in the hands of somebody skilled. If I overuse or inappropriately use a chainsaw, I'm going to pay for that. So I'm not saying it's not that extreme here, but don't take all the tools and run them at max if you don't have good hearing. Work into it. Start a little lower, and I'll just say the same thing. Here's how I'm going to use this if I'm not sure. I'm going to go through and preview and find a level. If I think 12 sounds great, I'm going to do a second test. I'm going to try it at 10.5. It's not that precise in terms of the numbers.
Right.
And I'm going to keep on bringing it down and see if I still like it. And then when I find, ooh, it's leaving a little too much, I'm probably going to leave it because, one, if I'm sitting here listening to this, I am focused not on what they're saying. I'm focused on the noise.
Yeah.
And what most people do is they tend to leave all this stuff higher than it needs to be. And it's not the end of the world. It's not that bad. But I find the point where I think it's great. I back it off a little bit and say, hey, is it still decent? And then I just have a tendency to go less. And my little rule is less is more. Less processing is better than more. Although, in the case of mouth noise.
Of course, mouth noise.
Yeah, I don't like mouth noise. Okay, but whatever. I still the same thing there. I would prefer less processing whenever I can get away with it. But anyway.
Okay.
So did I answer the question reasonable about this one?
Yeah, and as soon as I said De-Reverb, I had a whole bunch of people in the chat room just say yes.
Okay. Well, here's I'll give you that. So I don't have a sample here that had. Okay, so if we do this again, Steve, I will. We could do one day where we do a De-Reverb session where we do one of these that's short and that focus on that. Okay.
Can you just explain it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will the best I can. The issue is because I don't have. But here's the trick to it. I'm gonna go home here. when you're training it, people train, you only need about 15 to 20 seconds to train it. But what you want to do is find a place where you start off with no reverb or no signal, no noise, no sound, basically. So I'm coming in here blank, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Zoom out a little bit. All right, this is actually a good spot. If I were going to train on this one, I just move that over, put that in the center, up and down arrow key. It's equivalent to these two icons here. Centers it and zooms in. So I love having a spot where there is no signal coming into it and then getting past it where I have a section where it ends. Because if there is reverb here, I figured out over a long time that it kind of hears nothing, signal start. It knows the start, gets a clean start, like a runner gets out when the gunshot goes off cleanly if we're starting a race. And because it hears this cleanly, it gets a chance to figure out what is clean signal and where the reverb starts. And when it's done here, I want to have some blank space at the end. And if I train it on somewhere between 7 to 15 seconds here, and by the way, down here, it's showing me the length of my selection. You see this selection length? So I have 8 seconds there, and that just has to do with my zoom level. If I zoom out again, so if I were training this, I'm going to go into this blank spot a little. I'm going to start on a blank spot, and then I'm going to do this. I'm going to say learn. Now there's no reverb here, and so you can see this yellow line. This yellow line's kind of flat, and it's kind of looking at me. Well, it doesn't look at me. I think I work with this darn thing so much, it kind of has a personality to me. Well, it's kind of, I know I confused it a little bit there, because you would normally see this line going up and down too. And because that was the boost and the reduction, here I get this flat line, which is really appropriate for this piece, because there isn't any there for practical purposes. But had I trained it, you would see this yellow line going up. You would have seen these faders going up and down during the training. And then the only thing you want to change is this reduction. And what I recommend is you back this down to the least amount you can stand. It's not a perfect tool. Reverb is a very hard problem mathematically for a computer to deal with, and RX too. But if you'll train it in a section that starts off blank and you end in a section that starts off blank, you give it a lot better chance of training. And you need 15 seconds or so, and then take this and start adjusting it down until you get something that works for you. And when you find something that's absolutely perfect, back it off just 1 or 2, verify it again. I do tend to use the enhanced dry signal, which brings up some of the high end. That it makes it sound a little more natural to me in most cases. This is probably 9 out of 10 cases I'm using this enhanced dry signal. And you can leave all these, and if you don't understand them, so what? You need to understand 2 things: how to teach it and how to select the right zone. And then this reduction slider, it'll suggest something, but try it lower. I'm almost always going lower than at 1 or 2, but it is source specific.
So you've learned
to save some audio. That's really crazy.
I'm sorry. So you've learned to trust it enough that you don't have to mess with the low and the high and the tail length and all that stuff?
Very rarely.
Wow.
Very rarely. I can get it to where, so like I said, my son's doing all this stuff where he's out of town and he's in a hotel room for periods of time for away games that he's doing play-by-play on. And he's recording in these terrible hotel rooms sometimes. And really, I'm pretty much able to let it learn and then go ahead and use the reduction for 8 out of 10 things I'm doing. Now, if you really have you can go and listen to it. Now, you better have great ears and great monitors. Otherwise, you start messing with this stuff, and you need to really be hearing the right things. So for most people, and there's some people out there have awesome ears and very well trained ears. So I'm not saying you whoever's watching this don't, but you don't need to. It'll get it pretty darn close. It's averaging based on what it's hearing in there, and will do enough that I'm really worried about this one right here. Okay. It's mostly about training it properly. That in the first one, I didn't know. I'd just go ahead and highlight something and go, here it is. And I didn't start with a nice clean start and a nice clean finish. I found that just really helps. Okay. Other questions, comments?
I'm going to be selfish, and I want to ask a question on breath control.
Okay.
best practices for that, or is it pretty much case by case, just like the others?
Yeah, the breath control. So I'm getting approximately 7 out of 10 voices that it's working great on. I think it needs another generation before it will work on, 90 out of 100. Breaths are very difficult in that there are in the middle of words. This is not news to any of us because we all do the same thing. There are some sounds in the middle of words that sound like breaths. It's too close. And what this will do, so here's your task. You have to go through and figure out and output breaths only and do a preview.
On activity.
See if it catches this here. It didn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set it. So there's a preset in here. What is it? Silence breath. Yeah. So this is a great test thing to see if it will find the breaths that bother you. And if you use this preset, this is an excellent testing mechanism to get started. Okay. So if you know nothing else, there's the big tip. Start with silent breath and turn it on output breaths only.
On activity.
And see if it catches any of them. Okay. And if it doesn't, it means that these are too low or too close to other sounds. And what I'd have to do, let me see if I can find some breathy stuff that we could use here. And see, I didn't know every question you would ask. And because of that, there's a breath.
Want to do something else? Click.
Okay, let's see if I can get it to catch this one. So I do a preview here. Right here is a breath. Okay, and it caught something there. And then sometimes what I've noticed is it skips it here, but watch this. Let's see if we process it. See, it misses this one. This is a breath.
Click, 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 click.
And her voice.
Something else. Click something else. Click.
It just, there's some quick catch breaths in the middle that it will not catch. Some of the male voices I get a lot better. Some of the female voices I get less. So this is the place to start, and then slowly drop this back down and re-verify that you're getting them. As far as this is how much it's going to reduce. Excuse me, I said that wrong. Change this sensitivity, and so as you change this sensitivity, sometimes I can get it to.
And you want to do.
Okay.
At the top of the streams, and you want to do.
So for her, silent breath here didn't work on the default. I have to go higher.
And you want to do.
Not enough.
And you want to do.
And you're going to find this really bizarre thing. Sometimes when I go through and process it, it will get it. See that? How it just got that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but I didn't change the settings there. Didn't get it the first time. Got it the second time. And I talked to him about it. And I just go, well, the one thing I can tell you is this. iZotope does understand that it's not perfect. Okay. They really get it. I've been talking to them going, hey, I mean, I got this guy, it's working great. I got this other guy, it's working terribly. And then I've tried the Nectar one and the Waves version. And they all have, so the Nectar version, which is also by iZotope, and the Waves version were both originally developed for singers. And they do a pretty darn good job on singers. And you can get it dialed in on some voices where they do actually, the happy side effect is they will work for some voiceover artists too. But they're also inconsistent. I've worked a long time on both the Nectar one and the Waves version. And I have some voices where it sounds great. So then someone goes to me, man, the Waves one works great. And I go, yeah, but try it on 20 voices. And then they go, yeah, okay, now I see what you mean. Same thing with this. It's specific to the breaths, specific to the voice, and some it works great, and some you'll just throw up your hands and go, not enough, okay? It's also not available as a plugin because this one, because they were dealing with spoken word, not singing, the latency on it is too high. They're working on bringing that down. It's just not fast enough to work in a plugin situation.
Interesting. Okay.
Now I got a couple things I definitely want to, but you have another question, Steve, before a couple things I want to go over with people.
Well, I do have a couple, but I want to go through whatever it is you needed to show us first.
Okay. There's two tools that you guys, that everyone watching will want to become good with. One of them is called module chains. And the module chains allow us to go through and we can plus, 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 plus. So remember I told you maybe my big 4. So I can go through here and take something that I want to do. Let's pretend I want to EQ, and I want to go ahead and mouth declick, and I want to go ahead and do a voice denoise, and I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy out. And then I have those dialed in, and I don't like this interface. iZotope does a great job on a bunch of stuff. Their tech stuff is kick butt. And this interface is backwards. I don't read right to left anymore. I've transitioned in my adult life reading English to where I go the other direction. Maybe some of you do the same. This, I select it, and then I need to click on this, and then it brings it up. And once it's brought it up, there's no preview, there's no controls here, but as soon as I close it, it now takes those settings. So I take the eye. You have to see it. It needs to see it. It's looking at it. I guess it's looking at it. I don't know. That must be what it means. And I close it, and now it takes those settings. And I open this guy, and I pick, and if I had set a preset while it's open, I will set it for the preset that I created earlier. And now it sees, oh, preset, yay, zippity doo dah. And now with one button, I could do the whole thing, or I can do this little thing. And by the way, those settings are, and it's running 1, 2, and then it's going to run the third one for me. And with one click, I can run the same process. And when this person comes, and then I can give this a name, I can add a preset. Steve's amazing, unbelievable. I won't type all unbelievable. We'll just call it unbelievable that way. Process. All right. And then I can call that up anytime I want. And now I get those same 3 tools, and they send me something next week, next week's podcast, and it does it interactive, and it'll do whatever I've set up there. And it's actually a really great tool to streamline operations, because once you get your presets, I will come in here, find the preset that I want, pretend that was it. It's looking at that. I close this, and it's now going to run that EQ against whatever I run this, and I can have a preset. So if I'm editing 6 different podcasts with 6 different hosts, I can have a preset for each of them, because one guy, one gal might not have any reverb, so there's no reverb in hers. But if I've figured out that in one guy's place, he always has reverb, then I can go ahead and do what we did earlier. That's develop a preset for that person, assuming they stay in the same place. And I can go ahead and get my preset, and I can do that. You know, I mean, it's kind of funny. I have my son back to November of 17th. He was at a hotel someplace and whatever. But I go ahead and dial that in, put that in there, and then therefore I can replay all this stuff on a whole set of audio without thinking of it with one click. Fair enough?
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to be able to do, now this is a major chainsaw power tool.
Wait, where'd you find that? I missed where you went to do that.
Window menu, batch processing. And what this allows us to do is build up a whole set of process steps down here. I won't go over all the details of how to do that, but there's plus signs right here. And you can, with a plus sign, I guess I should do it. I'll add one, there it is. There's nothing in it. I go plus, plus, plus. I put in as many steps as I think I'll need at first. I go down and put in the steps that I want. So apply. I know what EQ, I'm gonna do the same one I did before. I'm gonna apply mouth declick. Then I'm gonna do De-Reverb if I wanted, or in my case, spectral denoise. And then where it says custom settings here, I'm gonna go through preset. And I'm gonna make sure all these are set to preset. And then I'm gonna pick the preset that applies. And I'm gonna pick this here, and let's see if I have a preset for this one. Oh, I don't have any, oh, I do. Okay, I guess I didn't have one for him for wherever he was. Anyway, whatever, I'll pick one here. There's a preset. And then what I can do, now this batch processing, you should consider this another program. It runs totally independent of the interface back here. I can be sitting and working here, and I can have this work as well. And if I have a wave file here, I'll pull in this guy. Oh, I don't like that one. I'm gonna take this one right here. And I'm gonna take this one right here. I'm just dragging in, let me see, I just dragged in a few here. my favorite clients. This one here. All right. I've just dragged in 3 files, 3 podcasts. And then what I'm going to be able to do is I've already set up the processing steps. I'm going to let it do its thing, and it will go ahead when it's done, and it will process these 3 files. Oh,
What?
all at once in the background while I am doing other things.
No. Oh.
Yeah. So you see this one here, actually, and because I'd have to do one more baby step there. Oh, I moved that over here. Hold on, that's going to be right here. So that's not it. Got to find my other one. I just closed that window, I think.
That's very cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's fine. Here we go. We can get this. So you're going to get this thing where you take a file and you bring it in. So I want to have at least 2, because the magic of this is that I can have multiple files and then I can have it process them. And while we're sitting here talking, I have 3 monitors, but you can do it on 1. I like to, if someone only has 1 monitor, you just set it down here at the bottom. And now you can work interactively on another file, or you can pull up Audacity or whatever, whatever your DAW is, and you can be running and just have anything else open that you want. And while that's working in the background, you're working on your next file.
That's crazy. So what you're saying is I've got a show where I've got 4 panelists, 2 guys, 2 girls. They're on Zencaster. 2 have mouth, click, and breath issues. The other 2 are kind of fine. I mean, I could run those 2 in this batch process thing while I'm getting the other 2 fixed up for whatever little nuances.
Well, not only that, but you can see while this is running here, I can also switch to a different preset and put some other input files in here. And this will run in the background while I switch. If I had a different process, because I have multiple presets over here, at the same time that this is running, I can add a second one and have them all running at once. And it's dependent on the power of your machine. If your machine has 16 cores or 8 cores or 4 cores or 2, it'll change how many it can do at once. But I've thrown 70 in at once, and it just does them in order. And as it finishes one, it does the next one. While we're talking here, it just went through on those files and finished it. Those were not long files. They were all just a couple minutes each, but it did a lot of steps against all those things. Okay.
So it
shares the machine really well. And so this is a real power tool for people that do this. And also it's going to save these. You can have as many of these as you want. And once you go ahead and have these all set up, then the beauty of that is that we can do something else. Go have lunch. Okay.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And I consider this, and it is a totally independent version of RX, meaning, well, it's running. You can't close it, but you can move it out of the way, set it out of the way. If you have multiple monitors, like many of us editors do, then you can set it on a different monitor. It'll do its thing in the background. And yeah, I'm doing this all day long, where I'm working on the next chapter, or I let this do the heavy lifting here, where it's doing the basic things of EQ, declick, mouth declick. And then as soon as that's done with that phase, I'm over here listening. And now I'm doing a manual tuning of something where I was unhappy with. And I got to show you one thing here. And then we can call it a night if you want.
I got 2 questions.
What's that?
I'll have 2 questions once you're done with this.
Okay. So here's one. I just want to kind of show off. I want to show off the power of this thing. And
has recently been appointed to a prominent
okay, now I don't know over the wires.
Can
you hear that cell phone buzz?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so pro tip, don't let your people have cell phones while they're recording. That would be the ideal, all right? But people send this. Now, this person did not even know they realized that they sent this to me with a cell phone in it. Now, I'm going to show you. Now, when people see what I do with this, first off, I can, even if that were louder, I can take it totally out. And there's a whole psychology. Something's called psychoacoustics.
Pointed to a prominent.
Okay, I'm going to take that out. And so there's a couple things. First, I would be working with something called Spectral Repair here. This is my go-to tool for taking out things. And I'm going to turn it on so that it works with instant process. So if you're not familiar with that, these that get tied together. And if I have instant process coming on, I happen to know, you can see it. So first, before I do anything, here's the buzz. It's here. You can see it here. Now it actually runs through the whole thing. You can hear it start about here and end about here. Let me make sure you hear that.
Pointed to a prominent pub.
Okay. So just make sure you hear that.
Yeah, we could totally hear that.
Okay, good. So I'm going to now zoom in a little bit, all right, just so we can see it a little clearer there. There it is. I want to get from here to here. So the first thing I always try is this. I'm going to go through with instant process and see if it will diminish it enough. Now, how much it takes out is dependent upon how I've set up spectral repair. And you're going to see that I'm just painting now. I've got a different way I'll do this because I've done it enough to kind of know. But here's the fascinating thing. All I did was draw on a few, and what you're going to hear.
Being appointed to a prominent.
Now it sounds like it starts here, but listen.
Being appointed to a prominent.
Hear that? Starts right here. Did you hear where this is now? You don't hear it here, and you hear it here.
Yeah.
Appointed to a prominent.
So there. Watch now. I do this a different way, but I mean, I just want to show you that I'm just going to paint. I'm just painting, and what I'm
How
doing.
does it know? How does it know to remove that? You're in spectral repair, but I mean, what's the setting, or how does it know? Just because you're dragging over it, you're saying take this out?
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm doing. Spectral repair. Spectral repair is the absolute most powerful tools for spot repairs that exist. Now, there's an investment in knowing it, okay? And you can go take a screenshot of this, stop the video, take a screenshot, start with these settings, okay? You can just steal them from me.
I'm doing it now.
Maybe someday, but whatever, I don't care. The thing is that what I've done is Spectral Repair says, look at what's before and after, and I've given it a minimum. I'll just show you. When I turn off instant process, when I highlight this, it gives me a special view. This middle area is where I want it to repair, and with surrounding region, as I make this bigger, you see that getting wider on the screen?
Ah, yeah.
Secret, it's showing me what it's going to do. And what it does, this tool is so special because one, we earlier talked about the spectrum. I can zero in on something and leave something else out of this problem. Now it's going to look at before and after, and I found from experience that if you start, and then these are my starting settings, I do change this. I have the strength about half-ish of what's possible, and I like the before-after weighting. I've learned over time that this gives me the best results as a generic setting. But understand, I've done things like this, and this, and this, okay, occasionally. So I'm not saying, these are starting points. You start with these and it'll help. And I'm not trying to take out everything in one pass. I like the fact that I'm taking out a little less. And by design, I've set myself up to where if I want to, I process this, it's just gonna take out a little. It's very finessed. And then I can just have it take out a little. But if I do this, when you turn on instant process, it is taking attenuate, this tab, and using these settings, and it is applying them to anything that I highlight. So that's why it's doing its job. It's really doing the same thing as me when this is off, highlighting, pressing process, highlighting, or I have a keystroke. I have my S key for its secret code for spectral repair. I have it mapped in there. So I could do it with a keyboard shortcut too, but I don't need to. When this is closed, it knows what it's mapped to, but I got to turn that on there, and I have a keyboard shortcut to turn it on and off. So I'm just painting. Okay.
So basically, the instant process function is kind of like Amazon one click. It just does it as soon as you click on it.
Boy, is that I'm going to steal that. That is awesome.
Go right
awesome. You just taught me something good. That's excellent. That's exactly what it's designed to do. And here's what happened. Now, I'm going to loop it. Turn off this. Set this here. Listen to this.
Pointed to a prominent. Pointed to a prominent. Pointed to a prominent.
Okay, so now I've moved it to where it starts over here. You hear it? I mean, these two are gone. This whole area is gone. Now remember, when I'll back it all out. And by the way, if I was really doing this right, and then so I can now go ahead and use that same thing, but here's the real cheaters thing. We've got all these high-tech tools in RX, and we can do all this. But once you know how to select little subsections, now I'm going to do this. Now watch this. The problem I get into is, all right, All I did was drag a few times. I'm doing this the hard way. So don't everyone think, oh, this is how he does it. But this is how you want to learn about it, because once you understand the principles, you can generalize them. There happens to be a little tiny thing going in here, and I'm going to take out a couple of them in the interim here, and that's going to make the whole thing. I'm being really surgical about it, and I'm zoomed in a lot, and you can see it feathers some of those things in. And then go ahead and listen to this. This is just amazing. Because what's the alternative? I call her back. Now, this is a narration. It's a book. I can go ahead and send it back to the narrator and go, hey, do this over again. You messed up. Keep your cell phone out of the booth, you loser. No, I don't do that. But anyway, I can just complain about it, but I just like fixing it, and they don't even know they had the cell phone in there. But here's what it's going to sound like.
Being appointed to a prominent public. Being appointed.
Now, let me loop it, because some of you are going, no, that can't work. It can.
It's still better.
Oh,
it's still better. But there's no module
Pointed to a prominent.
There's no, well, say that again.
There's no module called cell phone reverb or de-vibrate.
Yeah, there's no de-idiot mode. How's that?
Okay.
No, you know what? I mean, like this person sent me, I've had hundreds of hours from her. It's the first time I've got something myself. So she did, you know, I'm sure it was one of those, she didn't realize she brought it in the booth with her, and she did whatever. So there isn't, but I have had sets of clicks, and I even have an example on one of mine where there was a click where I could go in and just take out some stuff, and I could use one of the modules and just let it run over all of it and do it for me at once. And the reality is, since I happen to have seen things like this, let me undo about 400 times here, and it'll undo and redo and all that kind of stuff. So gosh, this would take forever if I was doing this way. And I'll put it all back, and then I'll show you the way. There we go. All right, I'm all back. So I'll grab it the first time. I'm going to copy it. I'll do it from the mouse so you can see what I'm doing. I copied. I'm going to go over here, and sometimes if I'm just not sure, can I repair this? Watch this though. This is so cheater. Everyone's doing all the high tech. It's got this high tech tool. It can do all this stuff. If I set Spectral Repair, by the way, to a higher level, it would have done that faster. I've got it just as my normal. But I can take the gain tool here, and because you can go in surgically, and I can take this right here, because I just figured it out with that other thing, and I turn that down 15. I might have to turn it down 30. Turn this down and turn this down. I just got 80% of it right there. Well, I'll let you listen.
Pointed to a prominent pub. Pointed to a prominent pub.
Here, it's right in here. It's still there. I could take it out this way. And then what I'm going to do is go in. Oh, well, let you listen.
Pointed to a prominent pub. Pointed to a prominent pub. Pointed to a prominent pub.
I still hear it. But you know what? Here's the funny thing. You and I, we're all sitting here and we're listening for it. We are trying to hear it. We are focused on it. In the course of somebody listening to a podcast that's 10 minutes or more, and that buzz that's left was there, no one will ever notice it in context, because at that point, our brain is decoding what the message they're discussing, not is there a cell phone in the middle. They're not expecting it. They haven't heard it the first 10 minutes. So we don't have to take it out totally, but I'm going to take down the major things with the gain, knock that down. Then I'm going to go back, and I happen to know that, you know, if I take out this little thing here, and I take out here, and I'm just going to surgically go through and just take out a couple little things. And you can find the one kind of bothering you a little bit and go in and do a little tiny bit of surgery. And you can see the brighter things here. I take that, take that, take that one. Okay.
I would say a lot of people
pointed to a
Say that again.
I'd say a lot of people would hear that and they'd be checking their own phone thinking it went off, not realizing it was in the recording.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. They wouldn't. You're right. You're right. So
pointed to a
but here's where this becomes a big deal. Sometimes you have a dog bark in the background, or you have a siren that goes by, or you have a plane that goes over, and you can apply these same things. I've taken out planes. I've taken out dogs. I've taken out bangs in the background, all sorts of stuff, just that are distracting to our audience. You know, all we care about is that they're not distracted. We can't have, now they're used to in a podcast, there's stuff that happens and no one cares if it doesn't happen all the time. And you make a business decision, like, do I want to go through and get every last bit of this? Can I? I can do it, and I can have it to where you can't tell I was there because we're not affecting the voice. So if you want to go more and you've got the time, do more. For everybody else,
Pointed to a prominent pub. Pointed to a prominent pub. Pointed to.
you know, no one's going to hear that in the real world.
Yeah, it's
Okay?
definitely subdued.
And that's just, and if you have those tools, so if you've worked with it, when then you get a high profile client and you want them to be pristine, here's the real kind of the way I do this. So here's a 16-minute thing. I have a rule for myself that the first 2 minutes have to be awesome.
Yes.
And I would prefer the whole thing is awesome. Hold on, I got instant. Now see, I have instant process turned on. I'll cancel that because I didn't want it to really do anything. I just wanted to highlight. First 2 minutes needs to be great. The last minute should be excellent as well. Then you have an arc. And in here, as long as they didn't fixate on or equivalent, then they're going to be much more forgiving if it's not too often in here. And so I may have to clean out every third I don't have to get every one, but you know, and then after that, it's a business decision about the client, the level of their audience. I mean, if they still have an audience of 3 people, it's just getting fired up and they're not paying anything, then that may be one level. I have a guy that's international. I've been paid over $10,000 to clean up 2 minutes worth of audio. It took me 2 weeks. But it was for a court case and they needed a specific thing. So you get to decide based on the application, based on what is going on. And I do have some examples here, like a bump.
Parents sacrifice on sending writer to college. Achievements give off.
Hear that?
Yeah.
Achievements give.
Okay.
Achievement.
So that, all I'm going to do is have instant process turned on, and I can see as I drill down here.
Achievements. Achievements.
It's right here. So there's a bump. Now you can't see it unless I zoom in, but once you zoom in, it's clear. And then now I have this on. Take that. I'll do twice on that one.
Okay.
Achievements give. Achievements give.
Can you hear that? That just took out that bump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Achievements give
Now
off.
it's gone. So that was 3 paints. Here's another one. I'll get. I'm cheating on you. I told you I was done.
Well, I still have my 2 questions to ask you.
Okay. So,
Coming from the chat
watch
room.
this. This happens for female. I've seen it on males too.
When if my mom is. When if my mom.
Some people, when they pronounce certain characters, I'm gonna take that guy right out there.
Is. When if my mom and.
I just took out just a tiny little glitch in her voice. She's doing.
Is. When if my mom
Okay.
and.
I can do that one now. My monitors are really turned down. I got one more I'm going to show here. I know I remember marking it. Oh yeah, mouse sound here. There's something else. Yeah, there it is. I see. I even see it. See that there? It's right there.
Important. And this was
This is at the end
important.
of her breath.
Yeah.
And this happens. People have this in their throat, glottal strokes.
Important. And this was important. And this.
So that one bothers me. But now.
And this was.
Now it's gone. So the power of that tool, that's all Spectral Repair. I'm just using instant process attenuate. And once you have it dialed in, I'm doing this every once in a while, and that takes out.
And this.
And now nobody knows we were there. It sounds pristine. And then it's a business decision in terms of how much of that stuff you want to take out, how important it is. I mean, I could show you 400 other examples, but I'm always doing my batch process first. Letting it do the major things first so that I'm down to just the critical things, and then it's a business decision how much we take in and out. Questions?
All right, from the chat room, got 2 here. Talking about reverb, do you add a little bit of artificial reverb afterwards to mask the artifacts that De-Reverb might leave?
I try to dial it in that I don't let it leave artifacts, but I'm fine with that. I actually, and if you have advanced, you have something. So if you're doing this for others, then ambience match is your friend for doing things like that, where I find something that I like in the audio. This is a bad example. Could I find something that has a good example? But if you use ambience match, here's the beauty of it. What it does is you find some room tone that you like, You can have it learn that room tone. You can give it a preset. Okay. And these are, I have somewhere in there, I have something. Oh yeah, there's a person there at the bottom. And you can go ahead and then apply that ambience match over anything you're doing, and it'll put in the same background across the whole thing, and it's brilliant. I mean,
So it's kind of like white noise, just adding a little white noise to.
well, whatever your background. The beauty is that you first teach it what my ambience sounds like in your room, the whatever room we're dealing with. You have it learn that, and then you can put that through. If you do some cleanup or changes, take out something, you can have it then kind of feather in that background over everything, and it's brilliant.
So an example that would be if I'm recording an interview with somebody and I say the wrong website, and then I'm at home and I want to re-record the website, but my room sounds different. So you're saying
sounds totally different.
That
You could,
ambience match works. Oh, that's interesting.
You can take the background from your original location and you can feather it into your new location, and people won't know that you weren't in the same place. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other factors there, because if you're on a different mic,
right?
You know, so assuming that we're on a similar, we get the mic now, there is also EQ match, and you can, if you're really good, you can do, you know, depends on how much it's worth to really do that. Is it worth the time? But yes, you can do it. I've done it. I use ambience match to cover up stuff that I have to aggressively go after a dog bark, and it kind of messes up because it was just too much stuff. And then I put something back so no one knows it was there. It just doesn't, it sounds seamless.
All right.
Next question.
Last question. This one was asked a while ago. Can we get an explanation of high pass and low pass?
Oh, sure.
And I'm sure this isn't specific to RX6, but
no.
I think it'd be a good lesson in general.
Okay. So, so remember, when we did in the beginning, we were taking, and I was drawing this little rectangle here, and I am playing this.
Being appointed to a prominent.
I'm playing everything.
Being appointed to a
I'm just playing this little rectangle here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put a high pass and low pass, what you're doing is you're telling it. Also, there's and this is annoying. So if you want to get annoyed, high pass means allow everything above this point to go through untouched. Low pass means allow everything below this point to go. And the other way of saying that is high cut and low cut. And both of those different products use the same thing, but what we're doing is we are and I'll just show you. Let me bring this up a lot. We have a section, and I need to make this one more aggressive here. We're in over here, the low pass. I'm going to give it the same slope. There we go. So watch what happens to this audio here. I'm high passing and low passing, which means cut out everything below this point and cut out everything above, because there is a range at which the voice, I'm going to do the voice range to the right. There's a range where the voice is the most intelligible. In fact, old telephones went from about 300 to about 3,000. So I'll make it sound like a telephone. And if I take this voice here, and I'm going to go, and I'm just going to go right here, and I apply this high pass, low pass. You'll see, watch the orange in the background. It cut out everything above this mark here, which is about 3,000-ish. Well, it says right there, 3103. If I learn to read, I'm going to work on my English and my number reading skills. The low pass was set at 282 hertz, which is down right here. And so this is what it let through, is the stuff in the middle. And now when you listen to this, it's going to sound like an old school telephone.
Being appointed to a prominent public function. Being appointed to a prominent public function.
So that was don't do that, by the way. Don't try that at home. That's just an example, because normally I will take everything above, undo that, everything above about 14 or so on the higher end. What do I have that set to? That's there. Let's move this one here. I want this, yeah, 14.8. And then down here in the bottom, I'll go ahead and about 100 is my starting point. And there's a little process I go through to get that. But that's roughly what I'm going to go through right there, where I want to cut out this section here, cut out this section here. Let me go a little more extreme so you see it. Watch the bottom section here. We process it. Now, did you see it take a little haircut off the bottom? and a little bit off the top. And that's what that does. Everything above or below those points get excluded. And when you realize that an old school telephone is going to only allow through, in the old days, from about here to here, and those things actually, I know some of you are too young to remember, but nonetheless, they were around for many decades and they worked pretty well.
Been appointed to a prominent public function. Been appointed to a prominent public function. Been appointed to a prominent
buzz, which happens to fall right in the range, but that's kind of the voice range there. So did that answer the question well enough? You're still muted there, Steve. Whatever you just said there was brilliant.
Yeah. Sorry, Daniel says yes. He's the one that asked the question.
Okay.
Yes, it did. So, wow. So, okay.
Yeah, and there's the one thing I just want to make sure that people take away from this is this: RX is that chainsaw, and it is an investment, and nobody is going to get it. So people go, well, is it intuitive? My comment to that is always, you know, when I was younger, I still don't today think the alphabet is intuitive. Why is X before M or M before N in the alphabet? I don't know. Somebody made it up and then they gave me a song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then I memorized it. And I don't know, is the alphabet, quote, intuitive? It doesn't really matter. A good tool is worth learning because there's enough return on it. And what is intuitive is going to be based on what's my background. I had a music background and a recording background. RX, I don't want to say it was easy for me. I already understood all the frequency ranges and where things laid. So for me, it was more intuitive. And then there's 100 other things that you learn over time and take it because it gives you payback. And you have this whole thing in this business that you have to remain competitive. And you were looking, I'm looking for, listen, if you don't use it, it's okay by me because I want the competitive advantage that my audio sounds better than yours. Ha, 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 ha. Because I'm selfish that way. And if you invest some time in this tool, you can take out clicks and pops and noises and your audio can sound cleaner, but you don't have to take tremendous effort once you learn it. I'm not saying there's a zero learning curve, but you learn how to use these batch things effectively and use the same ones over and over again and recycle. You get tremendous return the same way as learning the alphabet when we were little kids. I don't know how long it took me because nobody ever questioned it at that time. You just go, oh, that's what everyone's learning. You'll learn it. If you treat this the same way where you go through and you just every week, you learn a little bit, 3 months from now, you'll have so much stuff that you can clean up without a lot of effort and you'll get your time back. And I'm at that age where I'm looking for residual time. I'm not happy with learning new things like everybody else. I don't want to on one hand, but on the other, if you'll give me my time back, I'm willing to invest in the learning. And that's RX. It's worth it, but there's going to be something that confuses you. There's something that confuses me. There's a couple modules in here that I don't totally get. I'm sure I understand more than most people, but that doesn't mean I know every single one down to the last little thing. Fair enough? So it's worth it. It's not always intuitive, but it depends on where you're starting. It may be totally Greek to you, but there's so much online help and information and groups and stuff that anyone who decides to in 3 months will know enough to really help your career. And I don't understand the pros not using it. I do understand someone who's a hobbyist but even the hobbyist, you'll get payback and you'll get your time back. And I'm so lazy. I'm the hardest working lazy guy, you know, because I'm going to only invest in something that will give me payback. I don't really want to learn. I mean, I have 5 kids. I want to do some other things in life. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. We've taken way too much of your time, but boy, I'll tell you, I learned a lot of stuff. That batch thing is just crazy cool. So I'm going to definitely put this replay out there, and I might just throw this one up on YouTube so that anybody can benefit from it because it's crazy. Yeah.
So, yep. And if you guys have questions, can I plug the group?
Yes, please.
There's an RX Audio Rescue group, and you know, it started off, I thought there'd be 100 people in it when it got to be big, and now it's I think it's 1,800 people, and there's some real nutcases in there, which includes me. And but the great thing is it's not just me. There's a huge set of people using this across a wide range of situations, and it just means that when you have something, De-Reverb's not working for you, you post a sample up there and somebody will go, ah, yeah, you know, that's a tough one and do it this way. If I'm around, I take challenges and fix them and throw them up there. I can't always, you know, I do this for a living. So, you know, I'm happy to help where I can, but I set up batch processes for people. So if I know if they have one voice, I do this for narrators every day of the week where I'm setting up their whole batch. They don't even know how any of it works. So there is training available. I do charge for that. I'm not free, but there's also a ton of free material there available as well. So hopefully that helps. And, you know, if you want other information, I mean, you just be blown away by this tool the more you learn about it. Fair enough?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, just the rumblings we have inside the podcast editors group is all about RX6. It's just, everybody loves it. So thank you.
Yeah. And behind the scenes, just know that a year from now, or I don't know when, but they are very proactive behind the scenes. And if you don't have it, you might as well get it now and learn it, because they're working on fixing all the stuff that I'm whining about. I whine about a lot of stuff. I mean, it's a great tool, but nothing's perfect. And they actually really have this really good mindset of, okay, I see where it's not working. Send us more samples, send us more samples, send us more samples. And then they can test against it. So they're going to only be better in the coming years. So if you know it now, you have a little leg up over some other people who aren't using it. And I just think it saves so much time. It's worth it. So,
yeah.
All right.
Absolutely has helped me save time with my editing. So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for sticking around for watching this. Next week, I'm going to have a webinar with Dustin Hartzler. He's from Automatic, the people behind WordPress, and he's going to show us the changes to Gutenberg, because there are going to be some changes in the post and the page editor, which I think every podcaster needs to know. And that'll be next week. Also, PodFest. PodFest tickets are on sale for March 7th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. I just got to see Chris Kmitos this last week, and I'm really excited about it. So there's a couple more things you can keep your eye out for as far as things that are coming up. So Don Baarns, once again, thank you so much. It's Baarns, Baarns, from Red Baarns Audio. What is it? Red Baarns Media?
Audio, yeah.
Okay, great. And the Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/audio rescue. Go check out that group. Appreciate you, Don. Thank you so much.
You have a great night. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.